O thou forgiving Lord, thou art the shelter of all these thy servants. Thou knowest the secrets and art aware of all things. We are all helpless, and thou art the mighty, the omnipotent. We are all sinners, and thou art the forgiver of sins, the merciful, the compassionate. O Lord, look not at our shortcomings. Deal with us according to thy grace and bounty. Our shortcomings are many, but the ocean of thy forgiveness is boundless. Our weakness is grievous, but the evidence of thine aid and assistance are clear. Therefore, confirm and strengthen us. Enable us to do that which is worthy of thy holy threshold. Illumine our hearts, grant us discerning eyes and attentive ears. Resuscitate the dead and heal the sick. Bestow wealth upon the poor and give peace and security to the fearful. Accept us in thy kingdom and illumine us with the light of guidance. Thou art the powerful, thou art the omnipotent. Thou art the generous, thou art the clement. Thou art the kind, Al-Baha.
Ô mon serviteur, libère-toi des chaînes de ce monde et délivre ton âme de la prison de ton moi. Saisis ta chance, car jamais plus. Saisis ta chance, car jamais plus. Elle ne se présentera à toi. Ô mon serviteur, libère-toi des chaînes de ce monde et délivre ton âme de la prison de ton moi.
A few points that we discussed and got out of that paragraph. And I just wonder if there is someone volunteering to just summarize what we discussed last time from that paragraph, please.
Sorry, which paragraph is that?
It was paragraph 7 we discussed last time. Remember? Noah.
Sally raised her hand.
Huh?
Sally raised her hand.
Sally, okay. Wonderful. Sally, go ahead.
Well, I'm just looking at my notes, which, you know, is not 100% reliable. But regarding Noah, we talked about the 950 years was not literally the length of his life, that it is referring to the span of his ministry. And that the 40 or 72 believers really refers to just the fewness of the numbers of believers. And then
Right.
Noah is recognized in Islam as a prophet and apostle of God. And then we talked about the flood and the ark, the the meaning of that, according to the Guardian, that is symbolic. And so then we talked about what could that actually be symbolic of,
Mhm.
and also about the ark. The ark is used, of course, in the Baha'i faith quite a lot. And then we talked about the two sects of Islam, the Shiite and the Sunni sect, and the, you know, the how that all went, and the difference between the sect, and that the Bab is actually the fulfillment of the 12th Imam in the Shiite sect.
How wonderful, yes. Did you actually find that list of the imams and the caliphs of any use? Have you been able to read it? I look at it, add or subtract anything from it? Was it of any use? You think
Are you
that
talking to me? Are you talking to me, or just to everyone?
the imams and the caliphs?
To me, it's very interesting because you know, being a Westerner, we're very unfamiliar with Islam. I mean, terribly ignorant about Islam. So I appreciate anything that I can learn about Islam.
Well, all of us, I mean, all are learning, so it doesn't matter. I mean, even the Eastern people like myself, a lot of us don't have detailed information about the facts of what happened with Islam. Thanks to the Baha'i faith that now some of these have been made clear for us. Okay, any other points that somebody can think about from last time?
One other thing we talked about was how, or maybe Messi, you raised your hand.
I just was going to think was that what mentioned in that paragraph was Noah promised his people so many things, which when the time came, it didn't materialize. And he had to suffer quite a bit. That shows that, you know, God tests his people by these sort of signs. When it comes and goes, they were taking the words literally.
Yes.
And that caused a lot of people to cause him a lot of trouble and distress.
Mm. Very good point, yes.
So add,
Also,
no, please,
sorry,
right.
Roya. Also, were they talking about when because of the divine, who we could call them the mullahs and the hierarchies, when they arose against another religion, or at the time of the Bab, they arose. Also, the rest of the people followed them because that was the way they brought up. They would listen to their elders or mullahs and so on. That was, I think, one of the things.
It's guided them, yes.
And also people were quite tested all the time, but they didn't realize, I suppose.
Yes, of course. Anyone else?
I think another thing we talked about was how that when God makes a promise, then he still has the will or the authority to make it happen or not. And it can be a sign of his strength, whereas if a human being has that, it's usually a sign of his weakness that he cannot fulfill that. But just
Yes.
to show that, well, God doeth whatsoever he willeth. And yeah, it can be a test for us.
Yes. Of course. Yes. Yes. Good. Anything else? One of the other points is that Noah appeared. He was appeared in a different area to the other 5 prophets that we will see today that is mentioned in Quran. And those were, here we are, here is the map. And I don't know how, here we are. Here's the map. And the area that Noah appeared was in this area, you see? Now, most of the other prophets, the other 5 prophets, appeared in this, and we will see that today. So this map would be helpful to have a look. This is the Arabian Peninsula, which is a vast area. The majority of it is Saudi Arabia. Yemen is here. Oman is here. Then Iraq is over here, forming the northeast border of this. But here was where Noah appeared, this area. Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is the area, the name of that area between the land between the 2 rivers of Tigris and Euphrates. Yeah. Okay. Right, we've covered all that. The Baha'u'llah mentions in that paragraph we read last time, best known books. Now, he's telling the uncle of the Bab that when he mentions best known books, are the books written by some of these imams that we mentioned. And Baha'u'llah believes, Baha'u'llah has kind of described these imams, that their writings and their sayings are inspired writings. Not all of the traditions are accepted as being the right ones, but the ones that Baha'u'llah mentions and the books that Baha'u'llah mentions from these imams are the ones that are authentic, they are reliable. And that's how I thought of sharing with you the imams, like the book of tradition by Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, who was the 6th Imam of the Shiites, and so on. So that question of Imam and Caliph came about because of this, what Baha'u'llah mentions here, the best known books as the tradition books of the Shiites. Right. What else did we do? That? Oh yes. Then there was a question of the coming of the 12th Imam, the return of the 12th Imam. Now remember that we said that the 11th Imam did not have a son to succeed him. Therefore, they fabricated a lie that the 11th Imam, in fact, did have, which is not true, did have a son by the name of Mahdi. And he was only 12 years old, and he disappeared because of taking care of not being harmed by the enemies. And they made it for people to believe that he will return on the day of judgment, on the day of Qiyamah. And of course, when the Bab appeared, he claimed to be the 12th Imam. And his name, they said, was Imam Mehdi. His name was Mehdi. So in the Shiite, he's known to be returning as Imam Mahdi. But also, somebody brought this question up. I think it was in the class of Mr. Fananapazir, who's doing Iran online at the moment as well. He had said that the return of Mahdi is more believed by the Sunni sect. Now that is obviously true, and the Guardian in God Passes By on page 57 to about 60, he explains the station of the Bab and different religions of the past expecting their return. For example, he says the Sunnis are expecting Mahdi. Mahdi in Arabic means the one who is guided. And that's why they say we are expecting a person who is guided by God. And Mahdi means that. Now, but the Shiite who are expecting Imam Mahdi, they believe that the name of the Imam who disappeared so many years ago his name was Mahdi. And therefore they are waiting for the return of that particular person. Therefore it's a common belief between the Shiite and the Sunnis to expect the coming of return of Mahdi. One is expecting the 12th Imam, which is Shia, whose name is Mahdi. And the other one is expecting Mahdi, whose name means the guided one. Is that agreeable? Or somebody, actually one of you were going to do a little research on that, weren't you? That, for example, who is the title of Baha'u'llah that is expected by different religions to return, and the title of the Bab? Yes? Anybody, any comments on that, please? No?
Sorry, what was the question? Sorry.
The question is, for example, Bab is expected to return by the Shiite as the 12th Imam, or by the Sunnis as the Mahdi. And also similar names are given to the return of Baha'u'llah.
Return of Christ, one was.
Yes, I think so. I haven't been able to, I haven't had time to go into the detail of that. But I think most of the main prophets, like Christ who would return, the return of Muhammad himself, all the prophets of the past, you can, you can relate it to Baha'u'llah himself. And one wouldn't go wrong if one says Baha'u'llah's title to return as Mahdi was wrong either.
All right.
So you see, one cannot be very, what do you call, particular about playing with words and titles like that. But it would be, it's a subject that is very vast in itself, and it would be good to do some research on that, whoever is interested to.
Sally, you have a point?
I just so both the Sunnis and the Shiites are expecting someone named Mahdi. I didn't quite understand the difference.
You see, when the 11th Imam passed away, because he didn't, all the 10 Imams before him, their successors were either their son or very closely to him. Now, the 11th Imam did not have a son or somebody too near to him to be appointed as his successor. So the people who were near him and they were advisors to him, they made this up. They made this story up that he did have a son whose name was Mahdi, just for the sake of keeping this alive, as you would want to say it, so that they could collect tax, khums and zakat from people. So they said, but he disappeared. He was only 12 years old and he disappeared. But he will return on the day of judgment. So they call him the 12th Imam, or Imam Mahdi, as they gave him the name. But the Sunnis also expect the return of Mahdi. That's because Mahdi in Arabic means the guided one, the one who is guided. And therefore, both are commonly expecting the same what do you call, person with the same name, but their what do you call, intention is different. One believes that Mahdi is the one who is guided, will come, and the Shiite believe that it is that 12th Imam that disappeared and his name was Mahdi that will appear.
Okay, thank you.
Not at all. That's just my personal understanding. Maybe there is more to it. If you want, you can research into it. As I said, The Guardian in God Passes By on page 57, I made a note, has talked about the different titles of the Bab. Anyway.
Rostam John.
Jana.
And this, you said that Baha'u'llah said that the Shias were the correct way, like,
Yes.
after Muhammad, the Shias got it right.
Yes.
So it's supposed to be Ali. But in this sense, well, the Sunnis and Shias both didn't get that Bab was the Mahdi, but in this sense that Sunnis believe that Mahdi wasn't born and they were waiting for somebody to be born, whereas the Shia think, well, they lied, but they think that Mahdi is in the, hiding.
Yes.
So in this sense, the Sunnis were right, no? More correct.
In that
Because the
sense,
Shias believe he was born and he's hiding in a hole.
yes. In that sense, you can say, but you see, the point, I mean, is there anybody else who want to share their views on that? Please, don't let me talk too much. Anyone else? It's quite an interesting point.
Rustam, I just
Yes.
wanted to ask you, I'm a bit confused here about some people believe in the return of Qaim.
Yes.
Whether that is, I'm not sure whether we are.
The Qaim is the same as Mahdi, isn't it?
Yes, same.
Yeah, same
It's literally, it means one who arises, the Guardian says again.
Right, okay.
I am somebody who, claims to be or who arises.
Okay, thank you.
Not at all. And so that Baha'u'llah, or in the Baha'i writings, we believe that all the 11 Imams were the rightful ones, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, if the 12th Imam, it doesn't matter, forget about what they made lie about. The Imam did not do that. It was the followers of the Imam who made that lie, actually.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that
the Imam was already dead.
Yes, the Imam was already dead, but they
wanted the money of the tax.
Yeah, that was one thing. But it was meant to be, I think it was meant to be, that the 11th Imam was the last one, and then after that, there would a 12th Imam would be the Qaim at the time of Qiyamah, at the time of resurrection. So that's why the Bab says, after the 11th Imam, the 12th Imam that you are expecting, never mind that Mahdi that is hiding, that 12th Imam is me.
Mm.
And of course, he has proved it to be, because there are traditions in which it tells about the Bab, especially the Bab himself, the signs that Mullah Hussein found in the Bab when he first saw him was what the Bab had described it. Anyway, anything else to that?
Dr. Beheshti, we had a question as well.
Sure.
I just was wondering, the Sunnis had only 4 Imams, right?
They believe 4 caliphs. Yes, there were 4 of them that we mentioned last time. But there are numerous caliphs after that. Even today, similar to the Shiites that have Imam. For example, Imam Khomeini is one of those Imams that they believe in him. But they are all false ones. From the beginning of the time when Muhammad passed away, the caliphs, they came in groups. Umayyad, I think there were one group, and so on. But the first 4 ones of them are the ones that are believed, so far as I can understand personally. This is just my humble opinion from looking into the notes, that these are the 4 ones that actually the Sunnis believe in. Now, there are sects in Sunni, who have other imams. For example, there is a Qadian, the Agha Khanis.
Yeah.
Even today, they have, the Agha Khan, the rich man who is their caliph, their, up till today. And so they have had successor after the other.
So they believe up to for Agha Khani Ismailiya up to the 6th or 7th Imam, right?
As far as I know, I don't know, you might know better or more. As far as I know, from there onwards, they broke into a branch that they believe that has been one caliph after the other until now, that Agha Khan is the leader of the Islam.
Thank you so much.
Not at all. Anyone else know anything more than that? Okay, if not, we will proceed and we will read paragraph 8. If somebody could please read paragraph 8 of the Iran here. And now,
Yes, can I read?
go on, buddy.
Okay. And now consider and reflect a moment upon the waywardness of this people. What would have been the reason of such denial and avoidance on their part? What could have induced them to refuse to put off the garment of denial and adorn themselves with the robe of acceptance? Moreover, what could have caused non-fulfillment of the divine promise, which led the seekers to reject that which they had accepted? Meditate profoundly, that the secret of things unseen may be revealed unto you, that you may inhale the sweetness of a spiritual and imperishable fragrance, that you may acknowledge the truth that from time immemorial, even unto eternity, the Almighty had tried and will continue to try His servants, so that they may be distinguished from darkness, truth from falsehood, right from wrong, guidance from error, happiness from misery, and roses from thorns. Even as He had revealed, do men think when they say, we believe, they shall be let alone and not put to proof?
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Go on, somebody summarize that for us or tell us what your understanding of this paragraph is. Anybody could come in with your understanding, whatever. Somebody was going to?
Well, I could just say a few words. I think perhaps it's talking about that. Don't think that you can just come and say you believe in something and you won't be tested. So
Right.
there is always test follows.
Of course. That's a point, yes, in it. Very important for all of us. Yes. Anything else, please? You see, the very sentence, the very first sentence of this paragraph, what is it telling us? What is actually Baha'u'llah is telling the uncle, because uncle of the Bab was doubtful about his nephew's claim. And so Baha'u'llah, all the way through this book, is guiding him how to get to that point of certitude. And he's given him the formula of becoming sure about the station of the Bab. He says, if you want to know, if you want to become certain about this, then he keeps repeating this, consider, reflect a moment, meditate profoundly, and so on. Last time, I think it was Louis who had counted it, and he said there is 53 times Baha'u'llah has repeated this kind of phrases. So he means that we should all look into and do research to see why did they refuse, did they deny all these messengers who appeared amongst them. All of them, one and all, were denied. And he says, find out for yourself why. Why did they do that? Did they do that? And also he gets to the point where he says, moreover, find out why some of these promises that was given to them by their prophets was not fulfilled. You see? Because one of the questions that the uncle of the Bab was asking Baha'u'llah, he says to him that my nephew who has claimed to be the Imam has not fulfilled some of the traditions in Islam. And so Baha'u'llah is telling him to find out for yourself about the people of the past who were thinking the same as you are thinking now. Why did the promises not fulfilled? Anyone who has an idea on that? That some of the promises that we read and then we see that the prophet comes, but he doesn't have those kind of promises.
Is that the God try his people?
Of course.
Trying,
Yes.
so that we can distinguish, as it says further on, distinguish from darkness, truth from falsehood, and
Yes.
right from wrong.
Of course.
So that is one way of trying his people to see who can understand.
I'm sure, yes. You see, test, of course. But you see, there are many things that is written in these holy books and traditions that has got hidden meaning. For example, we see for the coming of this religion in many places is written in the books of, in holy books of the past religion, that the stars will fall when the promised one arrives. He will sit on the cloud and will come back, and when he appears, he will be ruling like a king, and there will be so on and so forth. And when all these manifestations appeared, every single one of them was just simple, ordinary looking people when you looked at them. So some people had that ability, that spiritual ability to recognize their station, and others, they were just looking for superficial signs. That's my understanding. I don't know about you guys.
It says here also, Baha'u'llah says to the uncle, meditate profoundly.
Yes.
The secrets of things unseen may be revealed unto you.
Yes, exactly. See? And this is, actually, this would be a formula for us as well. And this book is, you know, many people have made benefit from this book by just following these formulas which Baha'u'llah has given to the uncle. See, instead of following the misguidance of the priest and the clergy, one should use his own mind and investigate these things and see why all these things happen. And then he said, he himself says that what you said, Buddy, that even unto eternity the Almighty had tried and will continue to try. And try here means to test people. His servant, so that, as you say, light is differentiated from darkness, truth from falsehood, right from wrong, and so on. And then the very verse of Quran that says that, you know, people think when they believe, that's it, it's finished. But he says, you think there won't be any test for you? Obviously, there is going to be more test. Once you believe and you start serving, then you will see tests. And this is true for us as well. Okay, now I have made some notes. Where are we? Here we are.
Beheshti Samantha raised her hand. Maybe she
Okay,
has
Samantha, go on, Samantha. It's nice if everybody joins in.
Thank you so much, and thank you for letting me join this amazing study group. I was just going to say that this it refers back to earlier in the text, in the first couple of paragraphs. I feel where it's speaking of a true understanding, and Baha'u'llah is trying to point us towards not looking through the eyes of others who have got their own agendas and they've got their own shortcomings to prevent this recognition. So in these questions, I feel that what you were saying really spoke to me about that true understanding. And he's really trying to sort of be very, very forthright and sort of create this opportunity for Barb's uncle, and for obviously for us also, to be able to recognize this for ourselves, not to be told, but to exercise free will and still be able to recognize this through true understanding.
Yes, exactly. Wonderful point. Wonderful. Anyone else with your thoughts, please?
Is that also, you know, the tradition of this religion would stop them from moving on or believing in somebody, another manifestation of God coming and telling them something different or change?
Yes. Yes, it is. I mean, until the appearance of Baha'u'llah, of Bab and Baha'u'llah, people depended on the priest, on the leaders, religious leaders, because in the olden days, even during the time of Muhammad, not everybody was able to read and understand. You know, they were not educated, so it was necessary for these priests who could read the writings and explain to people what their understanding was. But unfortunately, as the time went on, they became more greedy, and their egos increased, and they loved the leadership, so they started misguiding people just to stay in position. Yes. Okay, wonderful. So somebody read this paragraph 8. Who we've got there? Sally, may I ask you to do that, please?
The one that starts in after Noah.
Can you see it all on the screen?
Yeah.
Take it up a bit.
Paragraph 8.
8, yes. This one.
Oh, 8. And now consider.
No, no,
No,
it's-
meditate.
No,
You
we
know
said
this
that.
note here. Can you see
Oh, the note. Oh, sorry. Okay.
paragraph 8?
Okay.
No,
Meditate profoundly.
Yeah, he mentions it, meditate profoundly in this paragraph. So
Okay, I think you should, I can't see the entire thing. Maybe you should ask
here
someone.
is where Louis comes in.
Okay.
Where is he?
move it up a little bit.
If you click on the right arrow,
Right arrow or left arrow?
right arrow.
Nothing else.
If you click on the document first,
The what? Sorry.
the document with the notes.
I didn't get that, Louis.
Yeah, you just moved it.
If you just click now, with your mouse. Yeah. Oh, okay. I can take over your computer.
Sorry about that. So that's the suffering I have. That's good. Now we can see.
Mhm.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry, that's too much.
Too high.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
This paragraph. Oh, it
Very
moved
slow.
again. I can move it with that, with the mouse. Okay.
Yes.
Right, Sally.
Okay.
This
Uh,
paragraph. Yeah.
Meditate profoundly. It appears by this and other phrases like reflect a moment, ponder for a moment, ponder a while those holy words in your heart, acquaint yourself, or meditate profoundly. Baha'u'llah is asking us repeatedly to search, each person for himself, the truth of the matter independently without relying on other people's opinion. Referring back to paragraph 2 of this book, Baha'u'llah reveals that men will never get to know his beloved unless and until he ceases to regard the words and deeds of mortal men as a standard for the true understanding and recognition of God and his prophets. We are all able to independently investigate the truth and weigh our judgment by referring to the Word of God as a standard.
So you agree with that? Would somebody would like to add anything or disagree with what it says? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. And The other one was this verse of Quran that Baha'u'llah has brought. Do men think when they say, we believe, they shall be let alone and not be put to proof. So if somebody reads this, it's very simple, but it might make meaning out of that. Somebody else, please.
Nominate.
Who? Go on, don't be shy, please. Anybody.
Okay, I can read.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Who are you?
I'm Shivani from Germany.
Wow, Shivani. Great. Go on.
This Quranic verse referred to those who reach the state of certitude.
Reach, I mean. Yeah, it's misspelled here. Sorry.
Okay, then I'll start again.
Yeah.
This Quranic verse referred to those who reach the state of certitude and become believers. They are warned that they will certainly be put to tests all along. It is comparable to a student who is studying to obtain high qualifications. The more tests he takes, the more is his reward in the form of a degree. The more we are active in the faith, so much more and harder would be the tests. And the more prepared we are, the more better is the result. Therefore, each of us must consciously and prayerfully make efforts in going through these tests successfully.
Wow. Yes. So one of the analogy that is we used here is a student who is studying and he has to go through exams and tests. Has anybody else any other ideas that can clarify that for us? Or does that make sense at all? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. If it's clear, we can go ahead if there is nothing else to share. So we read this paragraph, which is also in the Íqán, but it gives us the understanding of how our faith can end up before, passing away from this world. Somebody, please, read this for us.
I can read.
Yeah. Go on.
Is it from in Íqán, paragraph 214?
Wonderful.
Okay. With all his heart should the seeker avoid fellowship with evildoers and pray for the remission of their sins. He should forgive the sinful and never despise his low estate, for none knoweth what his own end shall be. How often hath a sinner at the hour of death attained to the essence of faith, and quaffing the immortal draught hath taken his flight unto the celestial concourse. And how often hath a devout believer at the hour of his soul's ascension been so changed as to fall into the nethermost fire. Our purpose in revealing these convincing and weighty utterances is to impress upon the seeker that he should regard all else beside God as transient and count all things save him, who is the object of all adoration, as utter nothingness.
Now, this is frightening, isn't it?
Mm.
Can somebody explain this or throw lights on this, what it means? You see that highlighted phrase, for none knoweth what his own end shall be. You see, in Persian, the original Persian phrase, Baha'u'llah says, Husn khatime majhul ast. And this is quite popular, this phrase, for none knoweth what his own end shall be, in Farsi amongst the Persian believers. Very often they mention to each other, they remind each other that the end of one's faith is not known. You see, we have to pray that we don't fall into the trap of failing any tests. You know, it can happen. We have seen the best of people like, you know, people who were very, obviously very prominent in the faith, serving the faith, what happened to them at the end. With little something that they just slipped away so easily. And then everything is zero. Everything goes to zero. So it's a very, I think it's a very important point for all of us to be aware of it all the time. And obviously, you know, the tests are many. It could be one of the friends who can be a big test for the other friend. It could be the thing we see from the institutions, the local assembly, the national assembly, that it becomes a test for us. And it's very, very easy to, you know, break away with ease. It's very, very important that we should pray for ourselves. Anything anybody wants to add to that? Any other information?
Rostam John.
Jonna.
You know, the first line, it says, with all his heart should the seeker avoid fellowship with evildoers.
Yes.
And then it says he should forgive the sinful.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of difficult to avoid them and still forgive them. How do you do that?
Exactly. It's not easy. That's why it becomes a test.
You forgive them, but still avoid them.
Yeah, it's difficult. I don't know anybody else who wants to. This is a very, very wonderful question. Is that Farana Khanum?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, great.
Yeah, it's very hard because in Kalamat Maknune also, hidden words,
Yes.
Baha'u'llah says that you shouldn't have any, you know, friendship with, you know, people that are evildoers. But then we are told that we have to always, even the enemies, we have to treat them like our friends. So it's kind of like, I always find it hard.
It is difficult.
I'd like to share something.
Yes.
Regarding this. First of all, thanks for having me on this in this study group.
Who is that?
I'm Sohail from Samoa.
Hello, Sohail. Yes.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Regarding forgiving others, for me, coming from a background where I have a lot of friends that are a test for me, especially in Samoa, but I've always seen them as a blessing for me to grow as a soul, as a spirit on earth. as a, you know, as Baha'is, we believe in that our spirits are going through physical experience in this earth. So I basically see them as a blessing for me as a soul to grow and to be a better person, to be a better service to them as well, and to my community, regardless of whatever they've been through, because I don't know what they've been through, but I happen to forgive them for what they have done to me, because they are a blessing and they've helped me what I've become today. So that's something I wanted to share with you guys regarding forgiveness to those that. And there is a saying as well in the Creeds of Confirmation that I think all of you have taken this one up, is that let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path. So that's something also that reflects on that quote.
Yes. Great.
No, forgiveness is easy. The problem is, how do you avoid them, especially if, you know, there's somebody that you will see.
To be honest, this thing cannot be avoided. Nothing can be avoided. Everything just comes at you, and all you have to do is accept it and give it your best shot as a Baha'i, really.
I think Mehdi has something to say, and Oshan also raised his hand.
Oh, Oshan is there. Good.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when you say avoid fellowship with evildoers, my understanding, it means that you don't join them, the evildoers. But at the same time, you can pray for such people so that God may guide them in the right path. That's what my understanding is.
Yes, of course. That's one of the things. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Just adding on what Mehri said, for me, one of the key things here is what is fellowship and what is friendship.
Yes.
Because there is no way we can hide ourselves in caves and not interact with all the people in the world. It's our duty to be friendly and act with fellowship and kindness and love to everyone. But the step of what is having actual friendship or fellowship with someone. So I think to be a friend to these people, 100% is without the question. You have to do that. We have to be friends with everyone. But maybe the question is of allowing them into your heart in another way. I think that's for me, that's what I read when I see that. Because I don't think you can not be friendly to anyone just because of where they are, because we might end up in the same position in the last moment.
Yes, yes. Yes, there was somebody else. Yeah.
A quote from the Will and Testament of Abdul Baha.
Yes.
I'm sure you all know this one. Should other people and nations be unfaithful to you, show your fidelity unto them. Should they be unjust toward you, show justice towards them. Should they keep aloof from you, attract them to yourselves. Should they show their enmity, be friendly towards them. Should they poison your lives, sweeten their souls. Should they inflict a wound upon you, be a salt to their sores. Such are the attributes of the sincere. Such are the attributes of the truthful. Someone is raising their hand. 2 participants. Please just unmute yourselves.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Barinda from Mauritius. I just wanted to share, it says, with all his heart should the seeker avoid fellowship with evildoers. So if a seeker, he's searching for God, and his fellowship with evildoers could kind of divert him from that path. The fellowship with evildoers might affect his thinking and might prevent him from having that independent investigation of truth. So maybe in that perspective, a seeker should avoid fellowship with evildoers.
Yes. You see, the other thing that we see has happened historically in our faith are the covenant breakers. Those are the only people, once they are declared as covenant breakers, they are the only people that we are asked not to be in contact with even, to keep away from that, because they are like COVID-19. You see, as you keep contact with them and you might catch the disease. That's why we are told to keep away from them. And I suppose maybe that the evildoers here are the ones who misguide you from the religion of God. They are actively against the messengers of God, and therefore they are considered as evildoers. Maybe. Do you think anything apart from that?
I remember, I don't know if this was mentioned because I was just doing something, but I remember Adib Taherzadeh saying that our own self is usually the greatest
enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that is because our own self is the one who chooses to be around a COVID person, around an evil person. So
yeah, that's ego, isn't it? Ego.
The nafs. Nafs akbar.
Yes, yes, true. The other thing is,
if we are firm in our own faith,
yes,
that will stop us from, going away from the faith. And so that is why it's so important to say prayers for ourselves and for the others around us. And as the previous friends, they said, I feel we have the duty to be friend with anybody comes across our way. Some of us, like myself in my job, I have to be with certain kind of people. And so, but if I try to be firm and then try to change their attitude and their lives, then that is what I think we should forgive and let them grow as well into become a better people or better.
Sure. Also, doesn't Abdul Baha say that if you find 10 bad qualities in a person and you see one good quality, just stick to that one good quality and ignore the other 10. So, we are all sinful. We are all have faults. It doesn't mean that if we see faults in the others, we should avoid them. There is always a good quality that one can, if you search, you can find in that person. And therefore, one sticks to that. I think as I mentioned earlier, the only bad people that we avoid complete contact with are the ones who are actively against the faith. And they are declared. And that's not a decision that we make. If our institution, the supreme body, makes someone as a covenant breaker, that's the only time that we follow that, and not us. We cannot, declare somebody a covenant breaker or somebody who doesn't have good faith in Baha'u'llah or whatever. We are not judges. We don't do that at all. But this is my understanding that those are the people that we avoid. The rest, we have to pray for them if we see something bad in them, but at the same time, we continue a relationship, human relationship with them. But we don't go and tell them, look, I prayed for you because you're a sinful person. We don't go around telling them that. Anyway.
I think
we may,
Samantha raised her hand.
somebody else?
Samantha?
Sorry, I don't know. I was just going to say the other thing that this maybe this refers to is renunciation. I find renunciation a very difficult subject, and I don't know that I've ever had to be tested in this way. But just this concept of how tests increase the closer you are to God, and the stronger your spirituality is, the more you will still be tested. And so where it says that even the most devout believer at the hour of his soul's ascension has been so changed as to fall into the nethermost fire. And so that all of us are capable, unless we are also capable of renunciation, perhaps. I don't know.
Yes, sure.
Ravi, you raised your hand.
Is it Ravi who's going to tell us something?
He took his hand down again.
May I share something real quick?
Of
Sure.
course.
Is that Adam? Oh, yes.
Yes. Hello. One of the things that I think is interesting is with the long obligatory prayer, it's declaring our kind of remoteness, and everybody is meant to say this prayer. So it's a very interesting thing that's baked into that long obligatory prayer, that we are showing some kind of awareness of the remoteness, and there's a longing and a despair happening in our being for that, and that's meant to be said every day. So it's an interesting practice to say it and to be aware of what we're saying when we say that. It's humbling.
The other thing would be to follow the footsteps of Abdul Baha. If you read all about Abdul Baha, what he did, how he behaved with people, his enemies, and so on, then we learn some lessons from that. We cannot be perfect, but we should keep trying. I think is the overall.
Ravi, your hand is up again.
Yes, please. Yes. I wish to add from what Dr. Behesti just said about Abdul Baha and his way of perceiving tests and difficulties. Abdul Baha states, the more difficulties one sees in the world, the more perfect one becomes. Therefore, the more sorrows one sees, the more perfect one becomes. That is why at all times the prophets of God have had tribulation and difficulties to withstand. Therefore, I am happy that you have had great difficulties and tribulations. For this, I am very happy that you have had many sorrows. Strange it is that I love you, and still I am happy that you have sorrows. Abdul Baha stated this. Why? Because he added on, men who suffer not attain no perfection. The plant most pruned by the gardeners is that one which, when the summer comes, will have the most beautiful blossoms and the most abundant fruit. I quote Abdul Baha.
Yes.
So, please.
You see, I heard a story that Abdul Baha was walking with some friends on the roadside, and he noticed a trunk of tree lying on the roadside, and it was kind of rotted away. It was disintegrating. And Abdul Baha stood there and he said to the friends, look at that trunk of the tree. If on the day one, this trunk was given to the factory, that they would have cut it, they would have hammered it, they would have, done all sorts of things to it, and this would have become a table or something that would have lasted forever. But because this was left lying there without going through all these tests, then its condition is what you see as it is now. And this applies to us as well. If we don't go through all that difficulties, then perhaps we become like that piece of wood that will rot away. But it doesn't mean that we should keep asking for tests. We pray that tests don't come to us. But if it comes, then we should be prepared to face it. Anyway, shall we move on to paragraph 9? Maybe we can, that's a small paragraph, we can do it. Quickly, somebody read that 9 paragraph.
Maybe someone we haven't heard today.
Yeah.
Go on then. Somebody be bold and read it, please. No?
Paragraph 9.
Yes?
Okay. And after Noah, the lights of the continents of Hud shone forth above the horizon of creation. For well nigh 700 years, according to the sayings of men, he exhorted the people to turn their faces and draw nearer unto the Rizwan of the divine presence. What showers of afflictions rained upon him, until at last his adjurations bore the fruits of increased rebelliousness, and his assiduous endeavors resulted in the willful blindness of his people, and their unbelief shall only increase for the believers their own perdition.
So this is Hud. Like anyone would want to summarize that paragraph for us, please? It's easy. No? Louis is thinking very hard. You want to share points on that with us, please?
Maybe someone we haven't heard could speak out.
Go on. Anybody? Ravi, what about you? You understanding? Anyone
Yes.
of your understanding of this paragraph?
Okay, I will try. I'll make a try of it, please.
Yeah, go on, please.
Yes. So after Noah came the prophet of Hud. So it is stated over here what he called upon people to turn towards God. That has been his call, and to draw near God. Then he showed that upon him when he uttered his word, what has been the end result of it? After supplicating people, after giving all the messages, the end result is that there has been an increase in rebelliousness. They rebel against him. So, and this caused people to become blind with the message of Hud. And from their blindness, what will result is only that they will go on their own perdition. And this has been perpetrated with all prophets of the past. You will see it. This is continue to goes on. Prophets stands up, give messages to people, and instead of believing in him, they rebel against him. And this leads to their own perdition. This is the end result of people who doesn't believe in messenger of God, in manifestation of God, in their teachings.
Exactly. Very good. Very good. So this last quotation is from Quran, and it says exactly the same, that these people who, the more the Prophet Hud tried with his people, the more rebellious they became. And eventually, Quran is saying that people like this, who are unbelievers, they are digging their own graves, as it's said. So I have prepared a few notes on that, and maybe we read that. Who shall we ask? Anybody? Volunteers, or shall we volunteer you? Buddy, do you want to read this? Paragraph 9.
I'll read it. Hud was one of the 5 prophets of God who appeared amongst the in Arabia, which extends across the whole of Arabian Peninsula to Jordan and the Sinai Peninsula, north of it. The 5 prophets who appeared amongst the people of Arabia and mentioned in the Quran are Hud, Saleh, Salah, Ibrahim, Shoaib, and Muhammad.
So where is the Arabian Peninsula is this?
This, yeah.
You see my arrow? Yes?
Yes.
So this is the Arabian. The most of it is occupied is Saudi Arabia. Yemen is here. And on the top, on the north, is Jordan here. And so this peninsula is different to the rest of these areas where the other prophets appear. For example, this one, this little triangular peninsula, this is the Sinai Peninsula. And Israel is here. See that little place here? This is where Moses, we will see as we read it in the next sessions or so, that Moses from Egypt came to this area, in this Sinai area, and took the Israelites to the promised land they were given, which is now Israel here. So Moses was here, Noah was here in Mesopotamia, this area, and these 5 prophets, Hud, Saleh, Abraham, Shoaib, and Muhammad, they all appeared in this region. And Prophet Hud appeared amongst the people of Ad. They were in the south of this peninsula, south of Arabia. And then I have listed here the 25 prophets altogether. 5 of them are the ones that appeared there, you know, Hud and Saleh and Shoaib and so on. And the other 20 of them are mentioned here. Now, I will share with you the notes, but whichever of these prophets that is mentioned there, if you click on it, then see this will appear and you go to the page and then it'll come as such. Oh no. Oh, I spoiled it, man. Doesn't matter. So that is for you guys. I will send it to you tomorrow, so that will be useful. Each one of these prophets, 25 of them mentioned in Quran, the 5 of them appeared in this region, in the Arabia region, and the others, you can find out detail about them, where and how they appear. Okay, now there is a little more explanation about the people of Ad and prophethood. So if we just read this. Any offers?
Someone whose voice we haven't heard?
Go on, Louis, encourage them.
I think you should volunteer people rather than ask for volunteers.
Okay, who is that? Faranak, do you want to read it?
Sure, I can, yeah. In the Arabian Peninsula, Ad was a nation in southern Arabia amongst whom prophethood appeared. They were called Ad because of the name of the ancestor Ad, who was a 4th generation descendant of Noah, is known to be the grandson of Aram, the grandson of Noah, who himself was a 10th generation descendant of Adam. The people of Ad were extremely powerful and wealthy, and they built countless buildings and monuments to show their power. However, the Ad people's wealth ultimately proved to be their failure, as they became arrogant and forsook God and began to adopt idols for worship. Right from his childhood, Hud remained consistent in prayers to God. It is related that Hud's mother, a pious woman who had seen great visions at her son's birth, was encouraged to worship. Thus, at the age of 40, by the will of God, he was manifested as a prophet for the people of Ad. Hud is possibly Eber of the Bible. See Genesis 10:24. When Hud started preaching and invited the Ad people to worship the only one true God, and when he told them to repent for their past sins and ask for mercy and forgiveness, they began to revile him and wickedly mocked God's message. Much like many people today, they believed that the purpose of life was to accumulate wealth, prestige, and possessions. The majority of the people refused to follow him and kept ignoring and mocking all he said, as their aggression, arrogance, and idolatry deepened. God, after plenty of warning, sent a thunderous storm to finish the wicked people of Ad once and for all. The destruction of the Ad is described in the Quran. Only Hud and his small band of followers were saved and are believed to have migrated to Hadramaut, area of what is today known as Yemen. Some Muslims believe that Hud lived for about 150 years and received revelations and prophethood sometime around 2400 BC, although there is no mention of the amounts of time elapsed after Noah in the Quran. According to a tradition of history, Hud was born 4. Noah's birth is 2705 before Christ. Note, the only book of the Old and the New Testaments do not mention Hud, Saleh, or the people of Ad, or Thamud. They are only described in the Quran. But others, Noah, Saleh, Abraham, Moses, are mentioned in the Bible.
So this is straightforward, isn't it? That appeared in the south of the Arabian Peninsula, around here. This is Yemen over here, where it says he was buried there. Is that what it says? He went there, Hadramaut.
Yeah.
He migrated over there, and I think that's where he is buried. Although I don't know where his grave is, there are few places that they mention about that. the people that he appeared amongst, they were known as Ad. This tribe was known as Ad. And later on, we will see that following that, there was a tribe called Samud, who amongst whom Saleh appeared, Prophet Saleh, in the same peninsula. Noah and Saleh and other prophets, the people of those, the people amongst whom he appeared, they opposed him and they denied him and they became against him. And so there was a thunderstorm like the flood of Noah, and the unbelievers were destroyed. Of course, this again is symbolic, and one should not take it literally, but it means spiritually they were made to zero. They were destroyed. Okay? And he's supposed to have lived for 150.
Could it be something like coronavirus?
That is inflicting us now.
Yes.
Possibly.
There is a lot of odd people now in the world.
Well, we are, we are told that there will be a calamity for human beings, but, we are told that things could be a lot worse than that. Anyway, now I just made this over here because in the Old and the New Testament, there is no mention of Hud, Saleh, which we will read afterwards, or Ad, people of Ad and Thamud in the Bible, but Quran mentions them only. Okay, now this long years, we read it last time, but we just read it again quickly, 750 years, 700 years that is mentioned, that Baha'u'llah talks about what it means. The Guardian explains to us. We read it last time, but just quickly read it again, and that's it.
Before we read, Beshte, Sally raised her hand.
Okay, Sally.
I think you talked about this before, but obviously the prophets do not have the same station as the manifestations of God, and I think we talked about the prophets did not have they did not reveal, they did not have a revelation, and they did not bring a book. Is that correct? But what I guess my question is, what is the definition of a prophet, and do the Christian people and the Muslims recognize the prophets in the same way? I mean, what is different about a prophet from just a normal man who is very
Apostle,
holy?
they call it, yes. Anybody would want to quickly answer that?
I don't know. Was John the Baptist a prophet? Because he prophesied that Jesus is going to come.
Yeah.
But I don't know. If do Christians think he was a prophet?
Mm-hmm. Anyone? Please do share your views, please. Otherwise, I will talk again and you will get fed up.
No.
See, in the Baha'i writings, we see prophets are mentioned about any of those major manifestations of God. Christ, Muhammad, Baha'u'llah, the Bab. We say prophet to them. And it means manifestation of God as far as the Baha'i faith is concerned. But in the other religions, like the Christians, they talk about lesser prophet and major prophets, and the prophets who didn't have any, didn't reveal any books, and so on. In Islam, they call prophet a Nabi, somebody who brings a message, who gives you, who prophesizes things, who says something about the future. And he doesn't have a book. And an apostle or a Rasul is somebody who establishes a religion with a book, like Quran, Bible, and so on. But Prophet Muhammad, for example, he had both these stations. He was a prophet because he was one of the messengers of God who prophesied the coming of this new age. And he was the last of those prophets in the Adamic cycle or the prophetic cycle that foretold the coming of this new age in which Baba and Baha'u'llah appeared. So he was Nabi, he was an apostle as well, because he brought Quran with him and he established a religion. Now, in some answered questions, Abdul Baha explains this very beautifully. So if you refer to some answered questions, you will see he calls prophets the
So in
major
Arabic,
prophet.
he was a Rasul.
Who? Sorry, I didn't hear your question.
I said, so Muhammad was both a Nabi and a Rasul?
Exactly. And so is Baha'u'llah, from the definition that the Muslims give. Baha'u'llah is Rasul, the Bab is Rasul and Nabi, because the Bab book is Bayan, and he established a religion, which is Babi religion, and he prophesies the coming of Baha'u'llah. And Baha'u'llah is Nabi and Rasul because he has established a religion, the Baha'i religion, and he has prophesied that in future there will be other prophets in about 1,000 years. So majority of them, all these major prophets, they had these two functions. And Abdul Baha explains very beautifully. He says the prophets are either the ones who are called universal prophets, who bring with them a book and establish a religion, but a prophet who doesn't establish, they are just the follower who doesn't establish a religion, and they are just followers of that main religion. They have no power as such from God. So I recommend if you go and read some answered question on that, it'll explain very beautifully and will become clear to all of us. Sorry, I don't have a good way of expressing things because of my horrible English, but hopefully that got the point across.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. So we meet on Sunday again.
Yes.
Thank you for all of you for being patient, for contributing your views, and please, that's so very useful when you give your opinion. Okay, so somebody would say an ending prayer so we can all go to bed who are in countries where there is bedtime.
Maybe one in Samoan.
Samoan language?
Yeah.
Sohail?
Yes. Yes, sir. PhD.
Yeah.
A prayer in Samoan.
Yes, please.
I'll chant. Peyai ea sheishi puluana omea whaingata Vangana lea tua whaiatu Ia vi ia lea tua o ia o lea tua O tangata umalava O ana au au na O ana au au na Mawa fushia fushia uma Elawa fio ma Peyai ea sheishi puruvanga omea whaingata Vangana lea tua whaiatu Ia vi ia lea tua o ia o lea tua O tangata umalava O ana au au na O ana au au na Mawa fushia fushia uma Elawa fio ma Elawa fio ma
¿Hay alguien que nos libre de las dificultades salvo Dios? Alabado sea Dios, Él es Dios. Todos somos sus siervos y todos acatamos su mandato.